so wonderful that our Bill Sears, our hand of the cause, has been so active and serving the Baha'i faith internationally when he was in Haifa, and now, even though not very young, still he travels to different parts in order to perform his function and duty as hand of the cause. As I said, for a man like Bill Sears to even talk about introducing him is like gilding gold. I'm guilty of that because who in this hall does not know Bill Sears and the wonderful books he has written? These books have immortalized him, because when we pass on, we are no more able to tell people about the faith ourselves. But the books we leave behind are responsible in bringing many souls into the faith, even when one is gone. And that is the kind of man, Bill Sears. You will hear him this morning. May I request Mr. Bill Sears, hand of the cause of God, to come and deliver his speech. Come, sit here. Yeah.
You're beautiful, all of you. It's nice for an old sports announcer to come back into a sports arena or stadium. I recognize the scoreboard up there, half of it. And I know the score, material world nothing, Baha'i faith 999. And that's only in the first quarter. I imagine you're all lotus blossoms today. The beloved Master said that one holy soul is worth 1,000 other souls. So I figure with the 8,000 or so here, we have really 800,000 instead of 8,000. And if we could arrange for buses to be at the door from here to the Oberoi Hotel, when this conference is over, we could conquer not only India and Asia, but Europe, and maybe throw in a few islands of the Pacific because of the spirit that has been generated here. If you're puzzled about the two places, over here, this is Bill Sears, sports announcer. This is our personal transformation corner, the deepening corner. Here, it's William Sears, hand of the cause of God, on the majesty of the Universal House of Justice. And since that's by far the most important thing, I think we should begin. To truly tell you about the station and significance of the Universal House of Justice, I would be talking until the coming of the next manifestation of God. But since we must conquer the entire planet before that time, we better move on with it. I have here, or I did have here, well, yes, I do have. This pamphlet, the Universal House of Justice, 16th in the teaching pamphlets they gave us to distill the essence of our faith and to move us faster on our way, although we must always go deeper and deeper. This tells you in far better language than mine about the Universal House of Justice. But I'm going to be more personal, perhaps maybe a little more tender, but I'm going to be overwhelmed by them myself, because after all, the Universal House of Justice is the source of all good, freed from all error, and sole refuge of a tottering civilization. Words from the will and testament of the Master in the world order of the beloved guardian. Shoghi Effendi himself said, "The unity of the cause of God and the victory of His faith will, even as the sun, become manifest in this exalted body, the universal house of justice." And our precious beloved guardian told us even more plainly, perhaps, in words of surpassing beauty. These are his words: "The mighty edifice, the universal house of justice, will be erected, raising high its noble frame above the world of existence. The unity of the followers of Baha'u'llah will thus be realized and fulfilled from one end of the earth to the other, and the living waters of everlasting life will stream forth from that fountainhead of God's world order to wash away the evils and iniquities of the realm of dust and heal man's age-old ills and ailments. Through it, the universal house of justice, the ardent hopes of the people of Baha will be realized. And through it, the pillars of the faith on this earth, the national assemblies, will be firmly established, its hidden powers be revealed, its signs shine forth, its banners be unfurled, and its light shed upon all peoples. Then, the beloved guardian goes on, with the coming of the universal house of justice, will all our cherished hopes and aspirations be realized. The trees of our endeavors bear fruit, the hidden powers of the cause be fully manifested, and then will be unveiled to our eyes the inauguration of an era the like of which has never been witnessed in past ages. Never. Peerless, unique, and transcendent. Well, I could stop right there, beloved friends, and my task would really be done. I admit that. But I have something so spectacular, something so much more wonderful to tell you about our Supreme House of Justice that the heart can hardly bear it, even though at first it comes perhaps as a shock to us. Imagine the chill that would come over our hearts to learn that our precious world-healing faith would have to go forward not only without our beloved guardian, but without our beloved Master himself. What does that have to do with the Universal House of Justice? Everything. Abdul-Baha himself, during those darkest days of his life, envisaged the calling for the election of the Universal House of Justice then, in his own lifetime, before there was established a guardianship. It's all documented in the World Order of Baha'u'llah, the wellspring of guidance, and in our writings. That would be a universal house of justice, mind you, functioning in full possession of all its mighty powers, all of its power. The Master himself said so. A universal house of justice in charge of our world-healing, world-redeeming faith, not only without our beloved guardian, but I repeat, even more unthinkable, without our beloved Master. Imagine that if you can. Imagine a world deprived of Abdul-Baha's will and testament, that fabulous document, that eternal charter that binds together for all time the three great ages of our faith, the primitive age, the formative age, and the golden age. For 500,000 years, 500,000 years, 5,000 centuries. Imagine such a thing. Or a world deprived of the wisdom and beauty and knowledge of 36 years of our beloved guardian's guidance. Well, of course, it's in every year of the beloved guardian's guidance a light year. Impossible, you would say. Yet every unthinkable word of that is true. The beloved Master himself
declared it was true. And listen to this. The universal house of justice to be raised up in the world at that time without either the beloved Master to guide and direct it and without the beloved guardian, that universal house of justice, the Master said, would possess all of the glory, majesty, power, and greatness of the universal house of justice that it would ever possess whenever it was established in the world, whenever, present or future. In those desperate days, beloved friends, Abdu'l-Baha wrote to Haji Mirza Taqi Afnan, the descendant of the Bab, who built the temple in Ishkabad, and he commanded him, not encouraged or suggested, he commanded him to call for the election of the Universal House of Justice, and told him how to do it if the threats against the Master's life materialized, and if he was, as was threatened, exiled to North Africa, cast into the sea, or crucified and the gates of Akka. He came that close in those days of history. He should call for the election of the House of Justice. It's all documented in our writings. And to show his tender love for the Baha'u'llah's holy and sanctified House of Justice, Abdu'l-Baha told those listening to him on one occasion exactly how glorious, how marvelous, how impregnable that Supreme House of Justice would be under all conditions. Renouncing any word of the House of Justice, Abdu'l-Baha has told us, is like unto renunciation of the word of the Kitab-i Aqdas, the most holy book. Observe, Abdu'l-Baha said, how important this matter is. The blessed beauty ordained the House of Justice as the lawmaker. If the Universal House of Justice had been operating now, today, Abdu'l-Baha continued, by the one true God, I would have been the first to obey its decree, even if it had been pronounced against me. I would be the first to bow down before it. Listening on that occasion, the friends were horror-stricken, and they said, impossible. But the Master said, no, it's true. And one of the friends, still feeling very outraged at the thought of such a frightening thing, he said, is the beloved Master of God, or is he not? He is, Abdu'l-Baha said. Is the House of Justice of God, or is it not? It is. Then, how can one instrument of God pronounce a decision against one of God's truly blessed ones, the beloved Master? Abdu'l-Baha smiled and said, my whole purpose in telling you this was to show you the power and majesty, the authority of this mighty house of Baha'u'llah. Beloved friends, meditate on that a bit, about that House of Justice. That's the House of Justice we're talking about here today. Invincible, impregnable, all-powerful, then and now, whenever the House of Justice would be raised up, no matter what the circumstances, whenever in the world, whenever. Imagine. It was so then, it is so now. It will be so in the future for all time. And that is who wrote this lovely letter, powerful letter, beautiful letter to this sacred temple dedication and to this conference. So now we know with whom we are dealing. We know who the beloved Master Abdu'l-Baha is. Only the future and history of the future can reveal the immeasurable greatness and staggering wonder of the beloved Master and also of our beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi. Thanks to that glorious book, The Precious Pearl, that magnificent literary masterpiece of Amatul Baha Ruhi Khanum, we know much more about the guardian than we did. And we are grateful to her. I always say that to me she is Queen of the world. She doesn't like me to say that. But I tell her Baha'u'llah said that truth is the foundation of all virtue. So she forgives me. Right? Sometimes. I hope this will be one of them. Well, of course, it was obviously never the plan of God that the world should be deprived of the infallible guidance and wisdom and genius of the beloved Master and our precious guardian. But it did give us this glorious chance, as it gave it to the beloved Master, to tell everyone and demonstrate once and for all the utter, absolute power, majesty, and greatness of our Supreme House of Justice. Of course, Almighty God would never let anything happen to the Master. Quite the opposite. In fact, at those dark days, to show the power surrounding the beloved Master, the British Friends talked to Lord Lamington, Winston Churchill, the Foreign Office, and they described Abdu'l-Baha's grave danger in his great station and urged them to protect him in every way possible. The Allied army under General Allenby swept in from Egypt in a surprise attack into the Holy Land ahead of time and drove out Jamal Pasha and the Turkish forces that made those threats to the Master's life. And the very first message sent out was after the news of the victory was this: notify the world that Abdu'l-Baha is safe. Nabil, in his Dawnbreakers, tells us how often Baha'u'llah himself came in a fearless manner through the most dangerous encounters, unscathed, to the astonishment of his enemies and the onlookers. The Universal House of Justice itself said it best in the Wellspring of Guidance, that his royal adversaries tried in every way to end Baha'u'llah's life and his religion, and to destroy him forever. Baha'u'llah was exiled like Abraham, stoned like Moses, scourged like Christ, persecuted from city to city, once scourged, 3 times imprisoned, 3 times poisoned, 4 times exile. But in spite of all that his enemies tried to do, he came at last to the mountain of God and to the throne of his seat of glory, destined for him since the beginning of time. The Universal House of Justice in the Wellspring of Guidance says, Baha'u'llah knew better than his royal adversaries what his destiny was. He was the Lord of hosts, and all of their attacks and threats were cast aside like spray from the ocean and broke themselves upon the rock of his adamantine will. So I'm going to talk about the power of the cause of God. The power that surrounds us all the time, a power that the guardian said causes the foundation of every structure to tremble, every mountain to be crushed into dust, and every soul to be overwhelmed, dumbfounded. So, we've seen what the Universal House of Justice can do with only the power of heaven. Now let's see what it can do with the great outpouring of 5 separate sources of infallibility. The Bab, Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, Shoghi Effendi, and the House of Justice itself. The first one. Are you ready for this? This is who you are, you know, and what you can do if you arrive. But the Guardian tells us in the World Order of Baha'u'llah about the traditional prophecy in the land of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, that all knowledge of the world is symbolically 27 letters. Of this total knowledge of God given to mankind up until the coming of the Qa'im, he who shall arise, the Bab, only 2 of these 27 letters have been given to the world and to the messengers of God to that time. In 1844, with the appearance of the Bab, all of the remaining letters of knowledge, all 25, were revealed by the Bab and through our faith, the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Imagine such a thing. If you are turned to the Bab and Baha'u'llah, of all 27 letters of the knowledge of God, and they are listening from a platform of only 2 letters of the knowledge of God. Don't misunderstand. Those 2 letters are beautiful and holy and the only path to God in that day. There is a tremendous power in them still. But when the 25 letters are revealed and unfolded as they are now, the hearts of the peoples of the world will be touched as promised in the Scriptures. And they will enter the faith by the thousands, by the millions. If we, the instruments of God and His holy messengers, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, are pure-hearted, and if we are turned to them and away from the world, they will come by the millions. If we are the instruments of the Lord, and that vast increase we've longed for so long will be a reality, and won't be difficult. It will be easy. Otherwise, if we do not transform ourselves and turn away from the world, they will remain faithful to their 2 holy letters, and we shall find them difficult to move, as we do now. So, I'm going to the Bill Sears Sports Corner for just a moment to demonstrate that, how we must transform ourselves. That's the world. This is us. This is the water of life. Unfortunately, most of us, to a degree, 1 degree or another, are turned not toward Baha'u'llah and the Supreme Concourse, but toward the world. Because of family, businesses, whatever it is. And so you see, when we try to accomplish this task with the holy water of life, right? It's good, isn't it? It's a little messy, but my wife Marguerite says that it is not dignified for a hand of the cause to pour the water like that. I tell her symbolically it's the water of life, and I'm a heavy tipper for whoever has to clean up. So it's not too bad. But look at that. See, that's you and that's me. Turn to the world, not to Baha'u'llah. Nothing's going to happen, see. However, we feel it's wonderful, right? That's great. But it isn't what it should be. It should be this way, see? Or, as we struggle away from the world, turn slowly toward Baha'u'llah, a little bit of a time. No, there's some in there. See, that's marvelous. You give that to somebody, they can't bear it. It should be so good they can't wait. Look, close your eyes for a moment. Close all of your eyes. Now open your right eye. Isn't that marvelous? You can't wait to open the other eye, can you? That's what's going to happen to you in our transformation corner when we... It's good mineral water. No, I brought my own mineral water, so it's all right. So you see, it's marvelous. But that makes it clear and very simple. But the other part that's good about that's the deepening. Our beloved guardian talked about. When I was on pilgrimage, he said we have mass teaching where people go and they touch hearts and they dig in the soil of the heart and everybody's excited. They can't bear. But he said it was important also to have mass consolidation. So that those who go out and teach and make the hearts on fire, tell them, you think this is wonderful? Wait till the next people come to tell you about the Bahá'í local assemblies and about the administrative order. You will thrill to it. And then we wouldn't lose so many of those people. Because that's wonderful to dig the water. But until we dig and dig until the people reach their own water, the bottom of the well, and it comes up, they will never again have to be taught and deepened. They have their own water of life. That's deepening. And until you reach that stage, you can't really affect the hearts of the rest of the world. Now, back here where I belong. But don't forget that. That's you and I, and that's the way we must be. Well, now, to the power that we have. We've said now with the house of justice. This is us, dear friends. For example, the beloved guardian said, one soul, only one, on fire with the faith can set an entire country ablaze. One soul. Imagine what all the souls here could do. And again, the beloved guardian, page 17, Bahá'í Life, declares one soul can be the cause of the spiritual illumination of a continent. Not a country, a continent. Imagine such a thing. That is the power that surrounds us. And that's a power possessed by every single one of us in this room if we turn from the world to the blessed beauty. Of course the power is there. On page 38, Advent of Divine Justice, Shoghi Effendi points out that Baha'u'llah can empower the most puny and insignificant among his followers to achieve such wonders as would dwarf the mightiest achievements even of Peter, the first apostle of Jesus the Christ. Peter, the founder of his church. The most puny and insignificant can accomplish these wonders. Of course the power is there. For over a century waiting for us to transform ourselves. Listen, Gleanings, pages 240, 241. Baha'u'llah says to all of us, all without exception, he says, had their inner ears been attentive, our inner ears, had we been listening to Baha'u'llah, and had they hearkened to my voice, most of the peoples of the earth would have by now been adorned with the ornament of my guidance. Did you hear that, beloved friends? Most of the peoples of the world would have been Baha'is 100 years ago if we had listened and arisen to teach. Of course the power is there, throbbing all around us. It takes the turning to the heavens so the water can fill us and transform our lives, but that's the power. Now, let me do it one more time from 5 different sources of infallibility from the heart of India. Because if you want to know where the instruments are, I'll tell you, they're sitting right here in this room, these instruments, and all over the Baha'i world. So, from 5 sources of infallibility, so prepare to swoon if you're ready. Maybe not yet, later you can swoon. From the Bab, promise. Say verily, any one follower of the faith can by the leave of God prevail over all that dwell in heaven and earth. Why shouldn't that one follower be you or me? Why not? Baha'u'llah, promise. He that summoneth men in my name is verily of me, and he will show forth that which is beyond the power of all that dwell on earth. Abdul-Baha, promise. In this century of the latter times, Baha'u'llah has appeared, and so resuscitated spirits that they have manifested powers more than human. You, all of us in this room. Shoghi Effendi, we can truly say that this cause is a cause that enables people to achieve the impossible. All of us. And the Universal House of Justice, their promise is that however hopeless the prospect may seem, Baha'u'llah will reinforce the Baha'is with his hosts, and he will open the doors of victory before them and enable the Baha'is to formulate audacious plans and confidently carry them through to completion in the face of seemingly insuperable obstacles. For the power of the cause of God is so mighty, it changes the very atmosphere of the earth. I'd say, isn't that marvelous or wonderful or magnificent or glorious? But there is no human word ever able to describe that gift of power. That's why we say the most great name, the most great prison, the greatest holy leaf. Superlatives. We have no words in any language higher than superlatives. It's the best we can do. But it's ashes to the truth of the wonder, glory, and greatness of our cause. Should be easy for us, shouldn't it? Right? Wait. You want power? Listen. This is Christmas Day, and it's a blessing to be talking on what they traditionally call the birth of Christ. He wrote in the sands of Caesarea Philippi. We don't know what he wrote there. It's gone. But the power of his tongue was so great, so tremendous, that Holy Spirit raised up the great Christian civilization. 500 million and many more. And they cling so tightly it's hard to pull their hands apart and touch them, because we're not turned yet toward Baha'u'llah as we should be. Muhammad, he didn't write with his own hand, he dictated. Quran was arranged some 200 years after his time. Scholars differ on that, but approximately. The point is not important, but so powerful. So powerful was the glory of the apostle of the desert, Muhammad, that he swept across Islam up into Europe when it was in the dark part of their time, and lent the impulse that brought about eventually a renaissance for the world, and millions follow him. So powerful were those two words of holiness that, again, we find it hard to pull their arms wide so we can embrace them and make them followers of Baha'u'llah. That's true of all the great messengers, Krishna, Moses, Buddha, Zoroaster. They all poured out an unprecedented guidance for mankind from the Holy Spirit of their tongues. Now, I have made a special preparation for you about the greatness of your faith. The Bab. The Bab. I'm sorry about the artwork. I'm not Pablo Picasso, quite obviously. But then, he was weak on protection and propagation, so it's all right. The Bab spoke in person to thousands and thousands, as no messenger of God before him. They flocked to his person, to his prisons, and to enforce public meetings. But the important thing about the Bab is that he wrote with his own pen for 6 years, volumes. And so, with only this, already your faith is the greatest faith in the history of the world because of those 6 years. Then came the Blessed Beauty, Baha'u'llah, who for 40 years in writing poured out his truth, flooding the world with his wisdom and love and unity, as the Scriptures promise, right? Baha'u'llah wrote over 100 volumes on all aspects of human society. 100 volumes in writing for society and the individual. And between the Bab and Baha'u'llah, we have 46 years of written revelation from two messengers of God, as promised in the Scriptures. Never on the face of the planet, since the early symbolical story of Adam and Eve, has there been such a power as that. You hold that power in the palm of your hand to transform first yourself and then the world. All right. Then came the beloved Master, appointed by Baha'u'llah in writing, a thing unique in history, in the book of his covenant, center of the covenant, mystery of God, Baha'u'llah's successor, all in writing, mind you. For 29 years in writing, Abdul-Baha enriched our understanding and told us what the Bab and Baha'u'llah meant by every word in their 46 years of written revelation. Imagine such a thing. Plus he talked to thousands and thousands of pilgrims. I remember when I was in the presence of the beloved guardian, he said such wonderful things. I always felt I'd have to hold on to my seat, or I'd fly up there and I'd be up by the ceiling listening to his wonderful words. Well, that's what happens with the beloved Master. Now, maybe more properly you can see from this, 75 years in writing. From the three central figures of our faith in writing, 3/4 of a century, written down, preserved in the archives for all time. Can you imagine such a thing? Don't swoon away yet. I know you're inclined. But I've posted security guards at all the exits. I don't want anybody out pioneering and transforming the world till we're through here, see? Because the best is yet to come. Shoghi Effendi, the beloved guardian, precious pearl that has gleamed from out the twin surging seas, pointed by the will and testament of the Master for all of us to turn to in writing. For 36 years, he enriched and deepened, interpreted and explained what the three central figures of the faith had meant in their... Imagine that if you can, our beloved guardian. Or, more properly, 46 years of written revelation from the Bab and Baha'u'llah, properly the book, 65 years of interpretation from the beloved Master and the beloved guardian, divine infallible guidance in its own way. It is all the book that the House of Justice has before them, or 111 years for the world, all in writing, for the House of Justice to have before they need legislate one word. 111 years of divine guidance preserved forever in the archives. In the body that it is my joy to be speaking about today, the Universal House of Justice. Baha'u'llah himself said that whatever the Universal House of Justice decided upon would be as binding upon the world as his, Baha'u'llah's, own laws and teachings. Whatever was not in the book, they, the Universal House of Justice, could legislate upon, and whatever they ordained to keep the faith in the forefront of all progressive movements, they could likewise repeal and make a new law, as it was not part of the book. 111 years. It's a wonder that we don't fall to the ground numb, as Ezekiel and Daniel fell to the ground numb in the presence of the glory of God. Okay, now it's all right, you can swoon away. And you should. Oh, I forgot to say, imagine, right? Beloved friends, I don't know when I'll see you again. Soon, I hope, out there, somewhere in the spiritual trenches, shoulder to shoulder, winning that desperately needed vast increase in the number of new believers so longed for by the beloved guardian. He said, whatever you need new teachers, you need more pioneers, you need more funds, you need more unity on your assembly, whatever you need, drown your troubles in an ocean of new believers. And I feel sure that from this conference and when it ends, that will come true and that we'll be transformed. Before I return to my glorious closing theme of the greatness of our House of Justice, may I have this one last visual outburst of love from me to you, personally, from the Bill Sears Sports Corner, where I hope we'll all be transformed. One last time. Not that to the world, even though that's marvelous, and we feel it and we're thrilled, but turn, slowly turn. Turn away from the world. Turn to the Bob, the Blessed Beauty, to the Master, to our beloved guardian, and to the House of Justice. And then you will see not only your own personal transformation, but also that of the world with the water of life, and by the thousands, the hundreds of thousands, and the millions, they will rush into the arms of our faith. Now, as I return to the Universal House of Justice and to our wonderful theme, in the words of Abdul Baha, it's in Baha'i Faith, page 248, we have made the Universal House of Justice an asylum for the poor and the needy. The mercy of God through the Universal House of Justice has embraced everyone in the world. From all the local assemblies of justice in the whole world, a universal house of justice shall be organized. And that which the universal house of justice ordains shall be obeyed by all mankind. And all the world shall come under its administration. And these soul-stirring words from our beloved guardian. Then, with the coming of the universal house of justice, will his, Baha'u'llah's, most great law be unveiled. It has been. Only then will the ardent hopes of the people of Baha'u'llah be realized. They have been. Then with the coming of the universal house of justice, will the throne of Baha'u'llah's sovereignty be founded in the promised land, the Holy Land. It has been. And the scales of justice will be raised on high. They are. By this means, the renown of the cause of God will become worldwide. It has been. And its light will illumine the whole earth. It has, beloved friends. I have with me here, they have led us out of obscurity in this, the opening of the fourth epoch of the formative age of our faith, the promise of world peace. No book in the religious history of mankind, except the holy books of the past, has ever penetrated so far and so deep into the heart of the world and into the heart of man as this, the promise of peace. What a marvelous and soul-stirring story it is. I hope that you will take my hand and that together we will make the world remember. New Delhi, December 1986. The time when that vastly needed desperately needed vast increase in the number of new believers. Some countries have 1% of the total population. Some have done wonderful things. And we are marvelous. We're marvelous. But in your own heart, ask yourself, are we marvelous enough? Have what we have done, is it good enough for Baha'u'llah, the supreme Redeemer of men, the glory of God, the promise of all ages, the King of kings and the Lord of hosts? And I think you will tell yourself, it is not. And so we shall arise and see that it is. From now on, every day of your life, beloved friends, whenever you hear that name, the Universal House of Justice, thrill to your fingertips that you are still alive and able to serve the house of the Lord of hosts, and arise like a lion of the covenant to do something big, something really big, more than you've ever done before, whatever it is. And don't wait. Do it now. Do it today, not tomorrow, because this is the time. Let them know how you feel in your heart. For it was He, Baha'u'llah, the supreme Redeemer of men, who first set down that magical name with the shrill of his supreme pen. The Universal House of Justice. The Universal House of Justice. The Universal House of Justice. May we all be worthy, or as soon as possible become worthy, to be part of Baha'u'llah's onward marching victorious legions, especially the 900 some souls, or 800,000, transformed souls in this room, all part of his holy, radiant, spiritual army. And this is how we do it. I salute you. Please remember me in your prayers.